Okay, picking up from where we left off, we were talking about the Natashastra and concept of rasa, and I wanted to point you to the assignments in our online text here uh, in Asian traditional theater and dance, this segment, Bharata and his Natashastra, and that is here. So, trying to explain what rasa is, literally translated as taste or essence, it refers to the things that an actor wants to evoke in an audience, the emotions that an actor wants to evoke in an audience. So, uh, during a sort of corollary period in Western theater acting, as theaters began to get larger, there was a codified system of poses and expressions that actors developed to send the message to an audience in a large, dimly lit theater, what the actors' emotions were, what the characters' emotions were. So we would have an actor on stage in a Western uh, theater setting, like in, say, the Drury Lane Theater in London, and in this gestural school of acting in the Western tradition, a person might put their hand to their forehead, palm outward, to sort of symbolize distress, and the audience would understand from seeing other actors that use this gesture, this series of gestures, that that was what that character was going through. This isn't really what the rasa is saying. The rasa is not uh, a an emotion that is being felt by the character. It is a pose which is designed to evoke that emotion specifically in the audience. It is a stylized form, and let's take a look at some of those poses. Here we have a sentiment of love. There are 8. The sentiment of happiness, uh, the pathetic sentiment, which would be sort of more like saddened, depressed, furious, heroic, terrifying, odious, sort of standoffish or putting someone off, and marvel. And the last one, which is the 9th, which was added later after the original composition of the Natashastra, tranquility. So there's a great deal more information in the reading, which I'd like you to go over. In this same section, we see some of the gestural codes that were developed for dance, the mudras, which you should have a look at as well. Dance was divided in the Natashastra between abstract, uh, pure dance, which just does not really convey a specific story, and the Nritta, which is actually does um, convey a actual story. Um, as we move down through this reading, we see that physical storytelling in the system of acting associated with the Natashastra really boils down to the smallest of facial movements. Um, Even potentially a well-trained actor could, in theory, express one set of emotions with one side of their face and another set with the other side of their face. So it was an incredibly disciplined uh, form of gestural movements which conveyed these different emotions to an audience. This rather interesting little segment, sort of dictum that sums it up: where the hand goes, the eyes follow; where the eye goes, there the mood follows; where the mind goes, there arises the sentiment. So this is sort of sums up the acting theory embodied in the Nadi Shastra. When we look at the next segment of the assignment of reading, we get into the Kudyatam, And there is a significant interview here with an expert on the Kudiyattam in your required viewing here, which is the next item in the menu. And then this is a longer documentary on Kudiyattam, which I think will give you a really good idea of this, the only surviving form of Sanskrit drama. Now, when we say the only surviving form of Sanskrit drama, what we're saying is it is the only continuously performed form of Sanskrit drama. We have other Sanskrit dramas that have come to us through research, etc., but this form has been continuously performed in India since the 14th century, which is something to be said. We don't have a lot of 13th and 14th century plays in the Western theatrical canon that are routinely performed today. I can't think of a single one. We have many 16th century plays, Shakespeare's plays, which are performed regularly, but this predates that. So the Kudiyattam really emerged from the temple theaters, what they call the Kuttamplalas, which would be the performance in temple theaters, where non-Hindus were not allowed to enter. And later incarnations of the Kudiyattam began to take this in a more pluralistic and more popular form, and they elaborated on episodes of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. And again, the acting form that is employed in the Kudiyattam is really one that relies very heavily on body language. Almost every word in the Kudiyattam is elaborated by lengthy commentary of gesture and mime. And not surprisingly, the Kudiyattam plays take several days to perform. So there would be a performance in a festival setting, and then the next performance would almost be like the next episode in a sense. It is a continuous story, but we're seeing it in an episodic form. And that would even include flashbacks and little pieces that gave us an idea of what happened before for those people that did not see all of the segments of the performance. The costuming and the makeup of the Kudiyattam are brilliant, iconic, and the performance and staging of it is something that is really unlike any other theatrical piece you'll ever see, and even different than almost any other theatrical piece you would see in India. So it's something that we're going to spend a great deal of time focusing on. Aspects of Kudiyattam are present in many Indian film and television programs. It's a big part of the culture, and it may be one of those things that you reach out and grab for your discussion work. The next segment that we'll look at, the Ramayana, is it's a historical dramatization of the life of Prince Rama. It's a version of the Ramayana, and for that, it's significant in that it is one more step in the direction of popularizing and making more accessible the great Sanskrit classics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So there's this constant, over the period of the middle era of Indian history, the Middle Ages of Indian history, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, we see this growing drive in the direction of taking these dramas, which were formerly performed either in temples or only in Sanskrit, which was not a language that was spoken among many people other than the Brahmins, and began to vernacularize and make these translate them into languages that the common people could understand, which was really the if you would say the sort of uh, edict of the Bharata's creation of the Nadi Shastra, which is to say the fifth Veda again, is all about creating a way for people to understand the Vedas uh, through theater and dance culture. So we see this constant transition in this direction, and this form of theater is another one of them. Um, so this segment covers a lot of that, and what's important here is that this is really the beginning of folk theater in India. It's a street theater. Almost every street in Varanasi uh, has its own Ram Leela committee. Um, the simplest Ram Leelas are erected in the streets. Road serves as acting area. They're performed along rivers. They're performed as part of this elaborate festival. And ultimately, this festival lasts as much as this. There's a 30-day mega performance in Varanasi, and remember some of the scenes that we saw of this in the Story of India. This great festival in Varanasi. We saw images of that in Story of India, and the climax of this is a scene of Rama's return and reunion with his brothers, and as many as 300,000 spectators will gather, and it's an enormous participatory spectacle and festival in Varanasi, and a legendary part of Indian culture. The last thing that we'll read about in the Asian traditional theater and dance text about Indian theater is folk theater. It's a rather short segment, but it's significant because folk theater, if you talk to the average or educated Indians that you probably would encounter in the United States, many of them will talk about folk theater and their encounters with folk theater in India. Um, and folk theater is a very accessible theater to people who speak any one of the number of languages in India. Um, they do adapt stories from the epics, like many of the other things that we've looked at. Um, they rely a lot on direct contact with the audience, improvisation. They're very similar in some ways to the Commedia dell'arte. They are performed, like I said, in the people's language and not performed in Sanskrit. And they're that sort of last piece of the bridge that we see between the sacred and the vernacular, the sacred and the popular in Indian theatrical tradition. Um, so I want you to have a look at all of those aspects, look at these videos, and then go ahead and take the Indian History and Theater Timeline test at the very end, and polish up the rest of the discussion work with your final posts where you place those items on the timeline, and you follow up with any comments and additional observations that you have for your fourth post, and that'll be the end of the unit. Thank you.